For 62 episodes and 5 seasons, you've been watching us on Mowing Pains do what we do best, and that's put the blades to grasses. So now it's time for you to get a little closer look inside the heads of the Stu Care Lawn Dogs and see what we're all about. Thankfully today, before he leaves for Florida, I was able to corral Mike Sr. to come into the shop and answer a few questions for us. So let's get to the interview on Mike Sr. I've been waiting here for 6 weeks for him to show up, and he still can't show up.
You still have the same clothes on. Can I get that close?
I would really prefer that you would be here instead of there.
Okay.
That is not where I need you right now. Come on over. Pull up a chair, young sir. So Mike Sr., he's in the house. Kind of know this, but maybe there are some people out there that haven't gone back through the 62 episodes to learn exactly how you formed Stu Care. But before Stu Care, what did you do for a living? I understand you were in the military as well, particularly the Navy. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I was in the Naval Air, not to be confused with the Naval Sea, during the Vietnam conflict. In fact, I was in as it started in '64. Did a 4-year stint and got out and came back to Ohio where I was born and raised, and got into computers. And this is 1966. And back then, those of you that weren't even born, computers were room size. They were room size. The memory systems were mammoth. Printers were as big as these big screen TVs, the old console models. Did that for a few years, and then was working indoors and didn't enjoy that as much. So ended up with a partner, and we started lawn care, snow removal, back in would be 78, right before the blizzard hit Central Ohio.
Now, while you were in the Navy, you were stationed on an aircraft carrier, if I'm not mistaken.
You're mistaken.
I am mistaken. You were not on an aircraft carrier.
I was on 3 different carriers just for long enough to have a class of pilots do X amount of takeoff and landings.
And you taught jump school?
I taught them how to eject out of the aircraft. I was a parachute rigger. If they had to go out and over water or land, they'd get out of the parachute, and if they went in the water, I would show them how to get their life rafts out, things like that.
Gotcha.
But I was in the Naval Air, but I was on an air base. We just in the 3 years I was out west in California, my turn came up 3 times to go out with a class of pilots, and we would only do a week or 10 days out on a carrier. Then we'd fly back to the land base.
Now, was there a particular situation on the aircraft carrier that we can loosely speak of that may not have allowed you to make it to running Stu Care?
Oh yeah, I about thought I was going to bite the bullet one day. We were out, I don't know what carrier it was, we were out in the Pacific around San Clemente Island, and there was a lot of flu going around with the shipboard personnel. So they asked us visitors to volunteer for extra duty or whatever. And so I volunteered to go up on the flight deck, and just like in the movie Top Gun, I'm standing between 2 cats with a big old glove on and a bucket of graphite grease. And as they're hooking the jet up to the cat, I go over there and the pilot drops a tail hook down. I put a glob of grease on that tail hook so it has a tendency to stick to the cables when he comes back around. And of course, as they're up there being hooked up to the cats, there's a huge deflector on the floor that comes up to deflect the jet blast up in the air so that it doesn't blow people off the flight deck. So I was done.
I can see where this is going.
I was done. Our class of pilots had flown, so the catapult officers told me I was free to go down below. So I start walking to the island, and I didn't realize that this deflector had malfunctioned, hadn't come up, and they had a jet on the number 1 cat, and I walked behind it, probably about 30, 40, 50 feet, something like that. And he's got that thing at idle, but it's still got a pretty good blast coming out of it. And I saw the flight deck officer over by the island, and he was doing this to me. And I thought, I thought it was one of our pilots from our squadron, so I wave at him just as I step into that jet blast, and I take off to the end of the aircraft carrier. I'm going by the island, and I'm by every other, and I know to myself, I'm going to die. I'm going to go off the back of this aircraft carrier, and they're never going to find me. And I said to myself, Self, you need to fall down and grab a pad-eye or a cable before you're off. Well, I was nowhere near the back of that aircraft carrier. But I did fall down, never lost that glove and never lost that bucket. And I'm laying on the flight deck and I get up and they shot that bird off. And then all of a sudden, it was like church on Sunday morning. You could hear a pin drop because everybody knew my butt was in the ringer. That flight deck officer came over to me and he ripped me up one side and down the other with some profanity. And the last thing he said to me, he says, Sailor, he says, what do you think I was doing? Waving at you? And I certainly wanted to say, yes, sir, I sure did. But that was the end of that.
Yeah. Yeah, well, thankfully you didn't get blown off the back and you're here and
pretty scary.
And live to tell another day. Question. Do you hold any records in the Guinness Book of World Records?
Not that I know of. Not that I know of.
None? None whatsoever?
No.
Okay. What are some of your favorite memories at Stu Care? I mean, 38 years of business, can you even begin to
That'd take
go
a
back?
long time, but I really enjoyed when we moved to the location we're at now, because I can walk to work. I've walked to work for years. I've got a ranch house on several acres with a couple buildings behind, and all of our operation is in those buildings. So I never drive to work, I walk to work, which is really nice. Good exercise. It's probably at least 100 feet. Got a lot of exercise.
Traffic by the diving board sometimes gets bottlenecked, right?
I have a little trouble riding the bike because they're real tight around the diving board and the pool house. So I walk most generally to work. But it's been nice. I really, not to sound meatish, I really enjoy the people that are working for me and have worked. It's like our client list. We have a very old client list. I've got employees that have been with me a long time, and that says something for the operation. Our deputy that did his stint in the sheriff's department has been with us 15 years. He's my right-hand man because I'm still working it. My foreman's been with us 30 years or so now.
Yeah, 30 plus, I think, easily.
I think really without sounding meatish, for years my wife and I, and she, God love her, put up with all this, getting this thing together. But, we had two girls first, and then we had a boy. And I always introduced my boy as my retirement, and Carol said I couldn't do that.
Everything okay over there?
So I stopped doing that. But it was really good when you came into the operation, because then that was my relief. That says you can retire someday and the business you started will go on.
Yeah.
That's a biggie.
Oh yeah. When you started Stu Care back in 1978, did you ever think it would become the local phenomenon that it is?
No, I did not. We moved to Delaware in '80, Delaware, Ohio, and it is Central Ohio, if you know your geography, is a booming metropolis. There's a lot of work here in this area. There's a lot of industry that just started here. But Delaware is just north of Columbus. It's almost part of Columbus now. But it's a really nice little town. We've got a great downtown area that still looks like it did in the 30s and 40s, just, upgraded. But it's a great atmosphere for an operation.
I understand over the years you've had a lot of toys in your life. And I'm not speaking of Transformers or anything like that. I'm talking about real big boy toys. What are some of your favorites that you can say you've owned, currently have had when it comes to toys?
Well, I've had a few Corvettes. I'll just let it go to few. One of the first was a '66 427 coupe with every option you could get on it back in '66, knockoff wheels and factory pipes and all that. And that was a good car, and it was I had it before the craze really took off, before Corvettes really took off. that was probably one of my favorites. And then the one I currently have, I've got a C6 Z06 that is still scares me. It's a race car that's streetable, and I've had it for 5 years now, and I've never taken off the traction kitty, and I'm just afraid of what it'll do. A lot of power, but of all the vets I've had, those two are my favorites.
Okay. Outside of stew care, what do you enjoy doing in your free time?
Well, I've got a Harley, and we've got a few of us older gents that get together weekly now, especially during the warm months in Ohio here, and we ride to dinner somewhere on Wednesday nights. We call our group the Romeos. It's retired old men eating out.
I was not even going to say, I was thinking Romeo and Juliet. I didn't know how that was going to work.
No, that's
okay. That's awesome. That's awesome.
And a few of us, depart in the fall when I'm able to get out of here. And we've ridden west numerous times. We've done Sturgis, which is probably the most fun I've had with my clothes on, is Sturgis. It's just people watching at its best. The ride out and back is good. That's worth the price of admission.
Awesome. Well, I understand you are getting ready to get out here because it is that time of year for you to do your annual trip down south.
I got my hands hidden.
So your last question I have for you, and then you are free to go. What is your favorite drink?
Oh boy, I'm a real fan of Coors Light, and I really like Mexican food. I'm really good with a margarita.
Okay.
Really good.
Crushed or cubed ice?
Oh, crushed.
Crushed all the way.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you taking some time out of your busy winter schedule before you take off to go south. This has been Meet the Stew Care Lawn Dogs with Mike Sr. Have a safe trip down south. We'll see you in the spring. Thanks for coming.
Can I go now?
You are free to go, sir.
See you in the spring.
See ya!